This next part I want to talk to y'all about. I guess this might be happy, or then it might give you pause for regret. Let's talk about tentacle monsters. And by tentacle monsters, let's talk about Yogg Saron. Yogg Saron, old god, from one of the greatest raids ever to be done in the history of World of Warcraft, Ulduar. One of the coolest experiences I ever got to experience in this game. The lore behind him and the outreach through the lore that he has. The impact that was implied that he has, or has had, over certain events. The design of the raid itself, from the bosses to the lore with the Titans to the descent into madness that you go on right before you step into his boss room. All of that build up through your journey in Northrend, leading to this climactic showdown with this old god that was imprisoned. Because that's what you learn at the end of the day, or learn through your end of your quest line and experiences in Ulduar and in the Storm Peaks, that Ulduar was nothing but a prison for an old god. This basically took the idea that they had with Ahn'Qiraj and C'Thun. The C'Thun raid is memorable to say the least. I would dare say that the Yogg Saron encounter was Ahn'Qiraj turned up to 11. The build-up as you descend down into Ulduar and get closer and closer and closer to the end is one of those moments in video gaming and one of those experiences that is very hard to put to words. The music build-up, the atmosphere, the seeing, the Twilight's hammer, and all of those guys that are followers of the old gods, seeing these individuals and monsters and creatures down here, and you slowly but surely, and you had not seen them the whole time in the raid, and then you finally realize these guys are here. And if you had played World of Warcraft for quite a while up until that point, you knew very well who the Twilight's Hammer were. You knew very well who these people were. They were followers of the old gods, and they wanted to bring back the Black Empire, the age of the old gods. So when you start seeing these followers, when you start seeing these followers and you start seeing these abominations and these aberrations, from that were, are, creations and followers of the old gods. When you start seeing these creations, you start to realize more and more and more, there's an old god down here. This is a prison. And you get closer and closer and closer. And then when you actually go into the encounter with Yogg Saron and the build-up with the NPC there, and I don't want to spoil everything, if you've never done the Yogg Saron encounter in Ulduar, the build-up to it, and then when he finally emerges out of that pool of Serenite, it is one of the most epic things I had ever encountered in World of Warcraft to this day. And the fight itself is still one of the most epic things I've ever done. It's unforgettable. When you do the Yogg Saron fight, you never ever forget that fight. Whether it's now or whether when it was current or even when it was harder, The reason why I'm bringing up old Yogg, the reason why I'm bringing up the old Yogg, scroll short stories. A World of Warcraft content creator on Twitter that I follow makes really, really good World of Warcraft animations and machinima stuff like that. He's really good at it. You should go follow him. He made a point that with everything that's been happening around the Shadowlands and death and things like that, this was a very good opportunity, instead of going in the direction they could have, and even writing off what they were doing with Battle for Azeroth with N'Zoth, the Black Empire and everything else. How cool and appropriate would it have been if after the N'Zoth patch in Battle for Azeroth, with World of Warcraft Shadowlands and the Realm of Death and the Afterlife, stuff like that, they had, instead of the jailer and everything else, what would have happened to public perception about this game, and how much more interesting, or even better, would it have been, is instead of the jailer and all of that, they had put this guy in there. The Void Lords invading the afterlife and things of that nature, which were already implied in the lore that it was trying to happen and was possibly going to happen. I say pull the trigger. They should have pulled the trigger and done it. Why? Besides his, self-proclaimed, title of the God of Death. His very occupation is being the old God of Death. His very titles himself, the lucid dream, the monster in your nightmares, the beast with 1,000 maws, the fiend of 1,000 faces, the God of death, that which must not be named, hope's end, master of fate. There's a lot to Yogg Saron. And not only that, when you do the encounter, you see something that is very interesting about the lore itself. For those of you that don't know about Yogg Saron, here's the deal. Yogg Saron is one of the 4 old gods of Azeroth, mysterious and dread elder beings that were defeated and sequestered by the armies of the Titans during the world's primordial ages. Upon its fall at the hands of the Pantheon countless millennia ago, Yogg Saron was imprisoned inside the Titan complex of Ulduar, within the depths of what will become the continent of Northrend. Yogg Saron is responsible, and I want y'all to think about what I'm about to say here, with all of this thing about how the jailer was behind everything. Think very carefully of what I'm about to say here. Yogg Saron is responsible for many horrors suffered by Azeroth. In an attempt to escape its prison, the old god corrupted the Titanforged keeper Loken and turned him against his own brethren, resulting in the death of Tyr, and created the Curse of Flesh, a malaise that turned countless Titanforged into mortal beings of flesh and blood. The very reason the races of Azeroth are flesh and blood is because of this old god. He is the reason. He is the reason all of the races of Azeroth are flesh and blood, because he inflicted the curse of flesh upon them. AKA, this guy is kind of the races of Azeroth. In a weird way, he's kind of the maker of the races of Azeroth through that very twisted process. Millennia later, Yogg Saron also corrupted the World Tree Andersil, forcing its Night Elven creators to cut it down, but not before the old gods secretly managed to open a gateway into the ethereal spirit world known as the Emerald Dream, and plant the seed of corruption that would later grow into the Emerald Nightmare. This guy, this old god, is responsible for the very creation of the Emerald Nightmare. This old god right here. This one. This specific one. He later returned in Legion, where his whispers could be heard through the halls of Ulduar again. If you don't think that Yogg Saron isn't a big deal, think again. He's a very big deal. A very, very big deal. Responsible for the creation of the Emerald Nightmare. Influencing, Loken turning on his brethren. Things of that nature. And. That's not all he did. He also influenced corruption within the Mogu. He also it is very, 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 very much implied that he had something to do with several events that happened within Azeroth itself, including the assassination of King Lane. It's very much implied there. It's very much implied that he may have had something to do with it. Let me find my notes here real quick. Yogg Saron actually was a god in the truest meaning of the word. Exactly. Oh, yeah. One second. There was a thing that I had here. Yes. During the encounter with the old god, in the Ulduar raid, 3 visions are shown to the player which represent key moments in the history of Azeroth, strongly implying Yogg Saron can be directly linked to these events somehow. These 3 visions include the creation of the Dragon Soul. You know, that thing that Thrall used to shoot down Deathwing and Cataclysm. The creation of the Dragon Soul by a Neltharion and the other dragon aspects during the War of the Ancients, which resulted in the Great Sundering. The assassination of King Lane by Garona Half-Orcan, which caused the fall of Stormwind at the end of the First War. And the vision of the Lich King torturing Bolvar Fordragon, the man who would become the new Lich King after Arthas Menethil's death. During the last vision, the voice of Yogg Saron can be heard proclaiming, "He will learn. No king rules forever. Only death is eternal." A prophecy of the old god that would later come to pass with Arthas Menethil's defeat by the Ashen Verdict, and words by which eerily repeated by Tyrannus Menethil's spirit as his final words to his dying son. All of this would have been much better lead-in and plot device and everything else leading into the Shadowlands. The fact that they are implying that Yogg Saron may have had a hand in these very key events in the history of Azeroth, from the creation of the Emerald Nightmare, to convincing those Night Elves to chop down their world tree, to, foretelling, Arthas' death and defeat, to possibly influencing what happened with Garona and killing King Lane. All of that. The creation of the Dragon Soul. And the Dragon Soul is not just some little artifact either. The Dragon Soul is not just some little artifact. It is a very big deal. This would have been a prime opportunity to put in this character that already had everything that they said with the jailer, as far as him being the great manipulator and puppet master behind all of these big key events in the history of Azeroth and Warcraft and everything else. The thing is, they didn't need to make a new character to do this and to have this role. They already had one. If they had said that Yogg Saron, who already had a history of manipulation of certain events in the history of Azeroth, if they had said that Yogg Saron was behind, influencing Arthas to kill Sylvanas, turn into a banshee, and all that, if that had been the case, people would have been more accepting of it. After all, he's a god of death. He thrives off of it. All the old gods do, but him specifically. That's not just a moniker. It's a thing about, it's the very core of what the character is with this old god. If they had said that he was behind, manipulating, say, Dreadlords or something like that, I don't know if that would go so far as saying manipulating the Dreadlords, because I was always one that liked to believe that the Burning Legion operated outside of things with the old gods, That's just me personally, because it's okay to have conflicting forces. It's very much okay. That was one of the reasons that Sargeras even freed the Burning Legion to destroy these worlds, because he looked into the void and saw what was coming. He knew the Void Lords and the old gods were coming. And in his madness, he decided, in order to stop these creatures from coming over and destroying everything, I'm going to do it. There's more to it than that. But they were very much a driving force. The old gods, the Void Lords, they were very much a driving force of what pushed Sargeras to do what he did in freeing the Burning Legion and, and becoming their head and their lead. But you could have tied in old god manipulation and corruption with that through Yogg Saron. My point is, they didn't need to make the jailer this god of death, and death will overcome all. They didn't need to make a brand new character and shove it into our faces and say that he was responsible for everything, They didn't need to do that. They already had one. They already had one in this old god. one of the more beloved villains of this franchise. People, you mentioned Yogg Saron to any veteran WoW player, and they will tell you, dude, what an epic raid. You know, dude, the implication that he was behind so many things, you know, because people, you know, they push the thing of the jailer was behind everything. Well, you can't say that when it's flat in the game showing that Yogg Saron may have been behind many of the key events. You know, you can't say that this character did it when this guy was already doing it, you know? And it's like, what are they going to say? That, oh, the jailer was manipulating, Yogg Saron? Give me a break. Give me a break. You know, I'm sure that might be an excuse of theirs. I don't know. But here's my thing, Chad. Do you honestly believe for a moment if the jailer went up against a fully unleashed Yogg Saron, who would win? My money is on Yogg Saron. My money is on him. Because at the end of the day, the jailer is just a construct. We saw this. He's just a construct. He's just a robot. You know? He's only bound by so much power, even though he tried to tap into the essence of Azeroth. The point is, the old gods know how to deal with these construct creatures. How do we know Yogg Saron wouldn't just inflict the curse of flesh upon the guy and kill him? You know? I mean, you know, again, because you also have to remember, when you encounter Yogg Saron in the prison of Ulduar, he's not at full strength. And he's only a physical manifestation of what his true form really is. So even then, the old gods themselves, the only two old gods that are dead in the lore, and I do believe one of these, we know Yasharaj is dead. We know he's dead because the Titans killed him. N'Zoth is still, I've seen points of contention to if he's really gone or not. I do believe personally he is, because we killed him in Ny'alotha, because we killed him in his realm. I do believe that he is gone. But I don't believe for a moment that Cthulhu and Yogg Saron are gone. I don't believe that these two are gone even a moment. I do think one way that they could salvage what they've done with Shadowlands, and this would be a kind of a 180, but you tell me, chat, what if it turned out, you know, I know people make the jokes, well, it turns out that was a manipulator of the jailer. What if it was Yogg Saron all along? What if it was? Would that be an accepted twist to the World of Warcraft lore? If it turns out Yogg Saron was manipulating the jailer. If he was, because it very much fits his motif. I think it would be an acceptable thing, because that's the point of the old gods, is manipulation. That's one of their greatest tools, especially this guy. Someone in the chat just said, what if the Curse of Flesh exists because Yogg knows way more about Zereth Mortis than anyone in the Shadowlands would want? I think that would be an acceptable plot device. I think that would be very acceptable. I think it would work. But what it all comes down to is this. One, putting him into this plot and using him properly. Because if they are going to go this route, and if they had gone this route, the entirety of the expansion should have been about him. I said before the last patch of Battle for Azeroth, the whole last patch, the Black Empire patch, the Visions of N'Zoth, there should have been a Black Empire expansion. I still, to this day, still say there should be a Black Empire expansion. I still say this. People know what that is. And the entirety of the expansion should be combating the old gods in the Black Empire. Going to Ny'alotha, the Black Empire, the realm of the old gods, dealing and fighting them on their turf. And building up to growing stronger and dealing with them there. Because it's the only way to get rid of them permanently is to face them on their own turf. But that itself lies the challenge. How do you defeat? The only way we barely defeated N'Zoth. We defeated him by BS means, with the Heart of Azeroth and everything, and firing the hype laser. But we don't have access to that anymore. I think if properly inputted, I think there is a chance they could still go this route. I doubt they will, but it goes to show we didn't need the jailer. We didn't need, the excuses of the jailer was behind everything. We didn't need for them to create a character that was this great manipulator and the puppet master behind all the key events in Azeroth and Warcraft and everything else. We didn't need a new character to have it shoved in our face. We already had one. They already had one. He was right there all along. I think it was very stupid that they went the direction they did when the answer was right there in front of them all along.